She was taken at dawn, claimed by a chief who believed fate had chosen her. But the moment she looked back, she realized someone else already held her heart. And what happened next changed everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Dakota Territory stretched endlessly beneath a sky so vast it seemed to swallow the horizon whole. Summer heat shimmered across the grasslands, distorting the distant buttes into wavering mirages. It was 1867, and the frontier remained a place where cultures collided, where survival depended on strength, cunning, and sometimes sheer luck. In a small trading post near Fort Laramie, a young woman named Eleanor Morgan stood behind a weathered wooden counter, her hands busy sorting through bolts of fabric that had arrived on the latest supply wagon. Eleanor was 23 years old, with hair the color of honey that she kept pinned back in a practical bun, though rebellious strands always managed to escape and frame her face. Her eyes were a striking shade of green, flecked with gold when the sunlight hit them just right. She had come west 2 years ago with her father, a trader who had seen opportunity in supplying both the military forts and the various tribes that still moved freely across these lands. Her father had died 6 months past, victim to pneumonia during a harsh winter, leaving Eleanor alone to manage the trading post. She had refused multiple offers of marriage from soldiers and settlers alike, determined to maintain her independence in a world that offered women precious few choices. The leather hinges of the door creaked, and Eleanor looked up to see a group of Lakota warriors entering the trading post. At their head walked a man whose presence commanded immediate attention. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a powerful build that spoke of years spent riding and hunting across the plains. His face was striking, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and dark eyes that seemed to assess everything with sharp intelligence. His long black hair was adorned with eagle feathers, marking his status. This was Chief Dakota of the Oglala Lakota, known among both his people and the white settlers as a fierce warrior and skilled negotiator. Eleanor had traded with Dakota before. He was always fair, always respectful, though she sensed in him a deep wariness of the white man's world that was encroaching ever further onto his people's lands. He spoke English well, having learned it from traders and missionaries over the years. "Miss Morgan," Dakota said, his voice deep and measured, "we need supplies. Coffee, sugar, gunpowder, lead for bullets." Eleanor nodded, moving to gather the requested items. "I can provide everything except the gunpowder and lead, Chief Dakota. The Army has restricted sales of ammunition to the tribes. I'm sorry, but my hands are tied on that matter." Dakota's expression darkened slightly, though he showed no other sign of anger. "Your army fears us, yet they push further into our lands each season. They bring their cattle, their railroads, their fences. They kill the buffalo that feed our people. And now they refuse us the means to hunt what little game remains." Eleanor felt the weight of his words. She had witnessed firsthand the tension growing between the native tribes and the flood of settlers moving west. "I understand your frustration, Chief Dakota. I truly do. But I must follow the law or they will close my trading post and arrest me. Then I would be no help to anyone." As she packaged the coffee and sugar, wrapping them in brown paper and tying them with twine, Eleanor noticed how Dakota watched her. There was something in his gaze that made her uncomfortable, though she couldn't quite name what it was. It wasn't threatening exactly, but rather calculating, as if he were considering something important. "You are alone here," Dakota observed. "No father anymore, no husband to protect you. This is dangerous for a woman in these lands." "I manage well enough," Eleanor replied, keeping her voice steady and confident. "I have a rifle, and I know how to use it. The soldiers from the fort check on me regularly." "The soldiers," Dakota repeated, a hint of disdain in his voice. "They cannot be everywhere. There are many dangers in this territory, not just from my people but from others. Renegade bands, outlaws who prey on the weak." Before Eleanor could respond, the door burst open again. This time, a group of Apache warriors entered, and the temperature in the small trading post seemed to drop several degrees as the Lakota and Apache locked eyes. The Apache were not common this far north. Their traditional lands lay far to the south and west. Their presence here was unusual, and immediately put everyone on edge. The Apache warrior who led this group was younger than Lakota, perhaps in his late 20s, but no less imposing. He was lean and muscular, with the build of a man who could run for miles without tiring. His face was angular and handsome, with intense dark eyes that seemed to burn with an inner fire. His long black hair was bound with a red cloth, and he wore traditional Apache clothing decorated with intricate beadwork. There was a wildness about him, a barely contained energy that made him seem always on the verge of action. "I am Kuruk," the Apache warrior announced, his English accented but clear. "We seek water and supplies. We have traveled many days and our horses are tired." Eleanor glanced between the two groups of warriors, feeling the tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. "I can provide water from the well outside, and I have supplies available for trade. What do you have to offer in exchange?" Kuruk stepped forward, pulling from a leather pouch several beautiful turquoise stones and a bundle of well-tanned deer hides. "These are worth much. They will trade fairly." Eleanor examined the items, noting their quality. "Yes, these will do. I'll gather supplies for you." As she moved about the trading post, collecting items for both groups, she could feel the eyes of all the warriors upon her. The Lakota and Apache maintained a careful distance from each other, neither group willing to show weakness by leaving first, yet neither eager for confrontation in this neutral space. Lakota spoke again, his voice carrying a warning tone. "The Apache are far from their lands. Why do you travel in Lakota territory?" Kuruk's jaw tightened, but he answered calmly, "We follow the game, as we always have. The land does not belong to any one people. It belongs to the spirits, and we are all children of the earth. The land belongs to those strong enough to hold it," Lakota countered. "The Lakota have lived on these plains for many generations. We do not welcome intruders, whether they are white or Apache." Eleanor intervened quickly, sensing the situation could escalate. "Gentlemen, please, this is a trading post, a place of peace and commerce. I ask that you respect that while you're under my roof." Both men looked at her, and she was struck by the intensity in their eyes. Kuruk's gaze lingered on her face, and she saw something flicker there, a spark of interest, perhaps even admiration. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but it left her feeling strangely unsettled. The trading concluded without violence, though the atmosphere remained tense until the Apache departed first, loading their supplies onto their horses and riding south. Lakota watched them go, his expression unreadable. Before leaving, the Lakota chief turned to Eleanor one final time. "Miss Morgan, you should consider finding a husband. A woman alone is vulnerable. There are many dangers you cannot foresee. I appreciate your concern, Chief Lakota, but I am quite capable of taking care of myself," Eleanor replied firmly. Lakota nodded slowly, though his expression suggested he disagreed. "We shall see," he said cryptically, then led his warriors out into the brilliant afternoon sunshine. After they left, Eleanor found herself standing in the empty trading post, her heart beating faster than normal. Something about the encounter had left her deeply uneasy, though she couldn't quite articulate why. She walked to the window and looked out across the plains, watching the dust clouds raised by the departing horses gradually settle back to earth. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Eleanor began closing up the trading post for the evening, securing the heavy shutters over the windows and barring the door from the inside. She climbed the narrow stairs to her small living quarters above the store, where she prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and preserved meat. As she ate, she thought about her life here on the frontier. It was hard work, certainly, and often lonely, but it was hers. She had built something of value, maintained her father's legacy, and earned the respect of most people in the territory. She had no intention of giving that up simply because some men thought a woman needed protecting. That night, Eleanor dreamed of running across the plains on horseback, the wind in her hair and the thunder of hoofbeats all around her. In the dream, she was being chased, though whether she was fleeing in fear or racing toward something with joy, she could not tell. She woke before dawn to the sound of horses outside. Many horses. Her blood ran cold as she crept to the window and peered through a gap in the shutters. In the gray pre-dawn light, she could see mounted warriors surrounding the trading post. They were Lakota, at least 24 of them, and at their head sat Chief Dakota on a magnificent painted horse. Eleanor's mind raced. She grabbed her rifle, checking that it was loaded, but she knew that one rifle against 24 warriors was no defense at all. Her hands trembled as she heard someone trying the door below, finding it barred. Then came Dakota's voice, speaking English so she would understand. "Miss Morgan, come out. We do not wish to harm you, but you will come with us. This is not a request you can refuse." Eleanor's throat went dry. "What do you want with me, Chief Dakota? I've done nothing wrong. I've always traded fairly with your people." "You have," Dakota agreed. "But you are alone, and alone you are vulnerable. You will come to our village. You will be under my protection. In time, you will become my wife. This is decided." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Become his wife? She was being taken, stolen away like property. "You cannot do this. This is kidnapping. The army will come for me." "The army has many concerns," Dakota replied, his voice patient but firm. "One white woman in Lakota territory is not among them, especially when she comes willingly and unharmed. You can come peacefully, Miss Morgan, or my warriors will break down your door and bring you out. Either way, you are coming with us. Choose wisely." Eleanor felt tears of rage and fear burning in her eyes. She looked around her small room, at the life she had built, knowing that in moments it would all be torn away. She had no real choice. If she resisted, they would take her by force, and who knew what might happen then. At least if she went peacefully, she might have some chance of escape or rescue later. With shaking hands, she gathered a few belongings. Some clothes, her mother's locket, a small amount of money hidden in a leather pouch. She pulled on her riding boots and a sturdy dress suitable for travel. Then, with her heart pounding, she descended the stairs and unbarred the door. The morning light was strengthening now, revealing the full scope of the war party waiting for her. Dakota sat his horse with regal bearing, watching as she emerged. His expression was not cruel, but rather satisfied, as if something he had planned had come to fruition exactly as expected. "You choose wisdom," he said. "This is good. You will not be harmed. You have my word as chief." One of the warriors brought forward a horse, already saddled. Eleanor mounted, though every fiber of her being screamed to run, to fight, to resist somehow. But she was surrounded by armed warriors miles from the nearest fort, with no realistic hope of escape. As they rode away from the trading post, Eleanor looked back at the building that had been her home, her livelihood, her independence. She watched it grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely into the vast landscape. Tears streamed down her face, but she wiped them away angrily. She would not show weakness. She would survive this somehow, and find a way to reclaim her freedom. They rode for hours across the rolling plains, through valleys and over hills, following trails that only the Lakota warriors seemed able to see. Eleanor's body ached from the long ride, but she refused to complain or ask for rest. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her weak. As the sun reached its zenith, they stopped briefly at a creek to water the horses. Eleanor was allowed to drink and rest for a few minutes, though she was constantly watched. As she knelt by the water, splashing the cool liquid on her face, she became aware of someone approaching. It was Dakota. He crouched beside her, his movements graceful despite his size. "You are strong," he observed, "stronger than many white women I have known. This is why I chose you." "You did not choose me," Eleanor said bitterly. "You stole me. There is a difference." "In the world of your people, perhaps," Dakota replied. "In my world, a man takes what he needs to survive, to build, to continue his line. I am chief. I need a wife who is strong, who can endure the hardships of our life, who will bear strong children. You are that woman. I am not your property," Eleanor insisted, her green eyes flashing with defiance. "I am a human being with my own will, my own dreams, my own life. You have no right to take that from me." Dakota's expression remained calm, though she thought she detected a flicker of something, respect, perhaps, in his dark eyes. "You will see, in time, that this is not the prison you believe it to be. Our women are honored, respected. You will want for nothing." and in time you will understand that this was meant to be." Before Eleanor could respond, Lakota stood and called for the party to mount up again. They rode on, and as the afternoon wore into evening, they finally crested a rise, and Eleanor saw the Lakota village spread out in the valley below. Dozens of teepees arranged in careful circles, smoke rising from cooking fires, children playing near the creek, women working on various tasks, warriors tending to horses. It was a functioning community, alive and vibrant, nothing like the savage encampments she had heard described by fearful settlers. As they rode into the village, people stopped their work to watch the arrival of their chief with his unusual prize. Eleanor felt their eyes upon her, assessing, judging, curious. Some faces showed hostility, others merely interest. She held her head high, refusing to cower or appear afraid, even though fear coursed through her veins like ice water. Lakota led her to a large teepee near the center of the village. "This will be your home," he announced. "You will have time to adjust before the marriage ceremony. My sister Winona will help you understand our ways." A woman emerged from a nearby teepee. She was beautiful, with long black hair and intelligent eyes that reminded Eleanor of Lakota's. This must be Winona. She approached Eleanor with a mixture of curiosity and what might have been sympathy. "Come," Winona said in accented English. "You must be tired and hungry. I will show you what you need to know." As Eleanor dismounted and followed Winona into the teepee, she cast one last look at the world outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant reds and purples. Somewhere out there was the life she had known, the freedom she had cherished, and somewhere, she promised herself, she would find a way back to it. But first, she would have to survive this new world she had been forced into, a world where she was no longer Eleanor Morgan, independent trader, but rather a white woman traded into a marriage she had never wanted, with a man she barely knew, among a people whose ways were utterly foreign to her. The first chapter of her captivity had begun. The interior of the teepee was surprisingly comfortable, with buffalo robes laid out for sleeping, and beautifully decorated parfleches containing various belongings. A fire pit in the center provided warmth and light, though the evening was still mild. Winona gestured for Eleanor to sit, then brought her a bowl of stew made with venison and wild vegetables. Despite her turmoil, Eleanor realized she was ravenously hungry and ate gratefully. "You are afraid," Winona observed, settling across from her. "This is natural, but you must understand my brother does not act without reason. He has watched you for many months, seen your strength, your intelligence. He believes you will be a good wife, a good mother to his children." "What about what I believe?" Eleanor asked, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Do my wishes count for nothing?" Winona's expression was sympathetic but firm. "In your world, women have few choices. You are alone, vulnerable. Here, as wife of the chief, you will be protected, honored, provided for. Is this so much worse than your solitary life in that small building, always working, always alone?" Eleanor wanted to argue, to insist that her independence was worth any hardship, but exhaustion was overtaking her. The long ride, the emotional shock, the fear, it all crashed down upon her at once. "When is this marriage ceremony supposed to happen?" "1 week," Winona replied. "This will give you time to learn our ways, to prepare yourself. I will teach you what you need to know." That night, Eleanor lay on the soft buffalo robes, staring up at the teepee's apex where the poles converged, and smoke drifted out into the starry sky. She could hear the sounds of the village settling down for the night, the murmur of voices, the laughter of children being called to bed, the distant howl of a coyote. It was all so alien, so far from anything she had known. She thought of her father, wondered what he would say if he could see her now. Would he tell her to be strong, to survive? Or would he be furious at her for not fighting harder? Sleep came eventually, though it was troubled by dreams of running, always running, never quite reaching safety. The next days passed in a blur of new experiences and difficult lessons. Winona proved to be a patient teacher, showing Eleanor how to tan hides, how to prepare pemmican, how to gather the roots and plants that the Lakota women used for food and medicine. The work was hard, harder than anything Eleanor had done at the trading post, and her hands quickly became rough and calloused. But she refused to complain, refused to show weakness. The other women of the village treated her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Some were openly hostile, seeing her as an unwelcome intruder. Others were more accepting, even kind, helping her when she struggled with a task or made a cultural mistake. Eleanor learned quickly that the Lakota society was far more complex than she had imagined, with intricate social structures, deep spiritual beliefs, and a code of honor that governed every aspect of life. Lakota visited her each day, sometimes bringing gifts, a beautifully decorated blanket, a necklace made of elk teeth, a pair of soft moccasins. He would sit with her and talk, telling her about his people's history, their struggles against the encroaching white settlement, his responsibilities as chief. Eleanor listened but rarely responded, maintaining a cold distance that seemed to neither anger nor discourage him. He was patient. She had to give him that, never forcing himself upon her, never demanding more than she was willing to give, at least not yet. "You are adjusting well," he observed one afternoon as they sat outside the teepee. "Winona tells me you work hard, that you do not complain." "What choice do I have?" Eleanor replied bitterly. "I am your prisoner, whether you call me that or not." "You are not a prisoner," Lakota corrected gently. "A prisoner is kept in chains, denied food, treated with cruelty. You are free to move throughout the village, to work alongside the other women, to live with dignity. In 3 days, you will become my wife, and then you will have even more freedom, more respect." "Respect," Eleanor echoed hollowly. "How can there be respect when there is no choice?" Lakota was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face. "In time, you will understand. In time, you may even come to care for me, for this life. I am patient, Eleanor. I can wait." It was the first time he had used her given name, and hearing it from his lips sent a strange shiver through her. Before she could respond, a commotion arose at the edge of the village. Warriors were shouting, people were running toward the source of the disturbance. Lakota stood immediately, his hand moving to the knife at his belt, and Eleanor followed as he strode toward the gathering crowd. What she saw made her heart leap into her throat. A group of Apache warriors had ridden into the village, and at their head was Kuruk, the warrior she had met at her trading post. He sat his horse with casual confidence, seemingly unconcerned by the dozens of hostile Lakota warriors surrounding him. "I come to speak with Chief Lakota," Kuruk announced in a voice that carried clearly. "I come in peace, under the white flag of parley. Will the great Lakota chief hear me, or does he fear the words of an Apache?" Lakota stepped forward, his face stern. "I fear no man, Apache. Speak your words, then leave our territory. You are not welcome here." Kuruk's eyes swept the crowd, and when they found Eleanor, they stopped. Recognition flickered across his handsome face, followed by something else. Concern, perhaps even anger. "I have heard that the Lakota chief has taken a white woman from the trading post. I have heard that he plans to make her his wife against her will. This concerns me. How does it concern you?" Lakota demanded, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "This is a matter of the Lakota, not the Apache. It concerns all people who value justice," Kuruk replied. His gaze remained fixed on Eleanor. "I ask the woman, do you go to this marriage willingly, or are you being forced?" Eleanor's heart raced. Here was an unexpected ally, someone who might help her escape this fate. But she was surrounded by Lakota warriors, standing beside their chief, and any wrong word could spark violence that would leave many dead. She opened her mouth, unsure what she would say, when Lakota spoke first. "She is under my protection. She will become my wife in 3 days' time. This is decided. Your interference is unwelcome and insulting, Apache. I suggest you leave before my warriors forget the laws of parley." But Kuruk did not move. Instead, he continued to look at Eleanor, and she saw in his eyes something that made her breath catch, a fierce determination, a promise of something she didn't quite understand. "If the woman wishes to leave, I will take her with me. The Apache do not believe in forcing women into marriage. We believe they should choose their own path." The tension in the air was palpable now, like a bowstring drawn too tight. Lakota's warriors had their weapons ready, and the Apache warriors sat their horses with similar readiness. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and blood would flow. Eleanor, Kuruk said, using her name though she couldn't remember telling him what it was. If you wish to leave, say the word. I will take you from here, return you to the white settlements. You need not be a captive any longer. Eleanor felt the weight of every eye upon her. She looked at Kuruk, at his fierce, handsome face, at the promise of freedom he offered. Then she looked at Lakota, at the man who had stolen her away, but had also treated her with a strange mixture of possessiveness and respect. She thought of the coming marriage, of a life as wife to a Lakota chief, of losing forever her independence and identity. But she also thought of the warriors surrounding them, weapons ready, prepared to kill and die. If she accepted Kuruk's offer, if she tried to leave with the Apache, would the Lakota let them go? Or would this end in a massacre that would be her fault? She began, her voice trembling. I appreciate your concern, but I cannot be responsible for starting a war between the Lakota and Apache. Too many people would die. Kuruk's expression darkened with disappointment, but also something else. Understanding, perhaps even admiration for her choice. You are brave, he said quietly. Braver than most. But know this, Chief Lakota. If she is mistreated, if she is harmed in any way, the Apache will hear of it, and we will return. Your threats mean nothing, Lakota replied coldly. Leave now, before I forget the laws of parley. Kuruk held Eleanor's gaze for one more long moment, and in that moment, something passed between them, an unspoken connection, a recognition of kindred spirits. Then he wheeled his horse around and led his warriors out of the village at a gallop, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. The crowd slowly dispersed, though the tension remained high. Lakota turned to Eleanor, his expression unreadable. You could have left with him, why did you not? Because I didn't want blood on my hands, Eleanor replied truthfully. Your warriors would have attacked them. People would have died. I couldn't live with that. Lakota studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You have honor. This is good. It confirms that I chose well. He paused, then added, but do not think of trying to leave. The village is watched constantly. Any attempt to escape would be stopped, and next time I might not be so merciful to those who try to help you. Eleanor said nothing, but as she watched Lakota walk away, she felt a strange mixture of relief and regret. She had made a choice, perhaps the only choice possible under the circumstances, but it was still a choice that bound her more tightly to this unwanted fate. That night, as she lay in the teepee trying to sleep, she heard a sound outside, a soft whistle, like a bird call but not quite natural. Her heart began to pound. She waited, listening intently, and heard it again. Slowly, carefully, she crept to the edge of the teepee and peered out through a gap in the hide covering. A figure moved in the shadows between the teepees, barely visible in the starlight. As her eyes adjusted, she recognized the silhouette. It was Kuruk. He had returned, alone, sneaking into the Lakota village under cover of darkness. He gestured to her, beckoning her to come out. Eleanor's mind raced. This was insane. If he was caught, he would be killed. If she was caught trying to escape, who knew what Lakota would do? But this was also possibly her only chance at freedom. In 3 days, she would be married to Lakota, and then escape would become infinitely more difficult. Making a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable, Eleanor grabbed her few belongings, slipped on her moccasins, and crept out of the teepee as quietly as she could. Kuruk was waiting, his hand extended toward her. She took it, and together they moved through the sleeping village like ghosts, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the posted sentries through what seemed like a combination of skill and sheer luck. They reached the edge of the village where Kuruk had hidden 2 horses. He helped her mount, then swung up onto his own horse with fluid grace. We must ride fast and far, he whispered. When they discover you are gone, they will pursue. Lakota will not let you go easily. Why are you doing this? Eleanor whispered back. You barely know me. You're risking your life. Even in the darkness, she could see the intensity in his eyes. Because I know what it is to be trapped, to have your freedom stolen. Because from the moment I saw you in that trading post, I saw a spirit that should not be caged. And because... He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Because my heart told me this was right. Before Eleanor could process this unexpected confession, They were galloping away from the village, racing through the darkness toward an uncertain future. The wind whipped through Eleanor's hair, carrying away the pins that had held it in place, and she felt a wild, fierce joy mixed with terror. She was free, at least for the moment, but she knew that Lakota would pursue them, that this escape had only bought her time, not safety. They rode through the night, putting as many miles as possible between themselves and the Lakota village. Kuruk led them along paths that seemed invisible to Eleanor's eyes, through canyons and across streams, always moving south and west toward Apache territory. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they finally stopped to rest the horses at a small spring hidden among red rock formations. Eleanor slid from her horse, her legs trembling with exhaustion. Kuruk was beside her immediately, steadying her with a hand on her arm. "You did well," he said, his voice warm with approval. "Many white women would have fallen from the horse hours ago." "I learned to ride when I was young," Eleanor replied, grateful for the cool water she splashed on her face. "My father believed women should be as capable as men." "Your father was wise," Kuruk said, settling beside her. In the growing light, she could see him more clearly. The strong lines of his face, the intelligence in his dark eyes, the way his long hair caught the morning sun. He was, she had to admit, extraordinarily handsome. But more than that, there was something about him that called to something deep within her. "We should keep moving soon," Kuruk continued, scanning the horizon. "But the horses need rest, and so do you. We have perhaps 2 hours before Lakota discovers you are gone and begins his pursuit. What will you do with me?" Eleanor asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since they fled. "Will you take me to a fort, to the white settlements?" Kuruk was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "I could do that, but the nearest fort is many days' ride from here, and Lakota will be searching. The safest place for you now is with my people, with the Apache. There, you will be under my protection. Lakota will not dare attack an Apache village to retrieve you. It would start a war neither side wants." "So I escape one captivity only to enter another?" Eleanor asked, though there was no bitterness in her voice, only curiosity. "No," Kuruk said firmly, turning to look at her directly. "You will not be a captive among my people. You will be free to leave whenever you wish, to return to your own kind if that is your choice. But I hope—" He hesitated, then continued, "I hope you will choose to stay, at least for a time, to know me as I wish to know you." Eleanor felt her heart skip a beat at the intensity in his eyes, at the unspoken meaning in his words. "You don't even know me," she protested weakly. "How can you be willing to risk so much for a stranger?" "I know enough," Kuruk replied. "I know you are brave. I know you have honor. You could have let the Lakota and Apache fight over you, but you chose to prevent bloodshed. I know you are strong, that you survived alone on the frontier when most women would have fled to safety. And I know," he reached out, gently touching her cheek with his fingertips, "I know that when I look at you, I see my future, if you will have me in it." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. This was happening so fast, too fast. Just days ago, she had been a free woman running her trading post. Then she had been stolen by Lakota, facing a forced marriage. And now, here she was, fleeing across the plains with an Apache warrior who was looking at her with an intensity that made her feel both thrilled and terrified. "I don't know what I want," Eleanor admitted honestly. "Everything has happened so quickly. I just want my life back, my freedom." "Then that is what I offer you," Kuruk said simply. "Come with me to my village. Rest, recover, decide what you want to do. If you choose to return to the white world, I will help you. If you choose to stay—" He left the sentence unfinished, but the promise in his eyes completed it. Before Eleanor could respond, Kuruk suddenly tensed, his hand moving to his knife. "Someone comes," he whispered, rising to his feet in one fluid motion. Many riders moving fast. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Lakota had discovered her absence sooner than expected. They had run out of time. Kuruk moved with the speed and efficiency of a warrior who had faced danger countless times before. He helped Eleanor mount her horse, then swung onto his own, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of their pursuers. "We ride hard now," he said urgently. "No more stops until we reach the canyon lands. There, the terrain favors us, and we can lose them among the rocks." They galloped across the open plains, the horses' hooves thundering against the hard-packed earth. Eleanor clung to her mount, her body moving instinctively with the animal's rhythm, as fear and adrenaline coursed through her veins. Behind them, she could hear the distant sound of many riders, and when she dared to glance back, she saw a cloud of dust rising on the horizon. Lakota and his warriors closing the distance with each passing minute. The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down mercilessly as they raced across the endless grasslands. Eleanor's throat was parched, her body aching from the relentless pace, but Kuruk showed no signs of slowing. His face was set with grim determination, his eyes fixed on the distant line of red rock formations that marked the beginning of the canyon lands. "They are gaining," Eleanor called out, her voice nearly lost in the wind. She could see the Lakota riders more clearly now, at least 20 warriors with Lakota at their head on his magnificent painted horse. They were expert horsemen, and their mounts were fresh, having started the pursuit after a full night's rest. "I know," Kuruk shouted back, "but we are almost there. Hold on, Eleanor. Trust me. Trust him." It was strange how easily that came to her, this warrior she had met only twice before. Yet something in her core told her that Kuruk would die before he let Lakota take her back, and that knowledge was both comforting and terrifying. They reached the canyon lands as the Lakota warriors closed to within a few hundred yards. Kuruk guided them into a narrow passage between towering red rock walls, the sudden shade a blessed relief from the brutal sun. The passage twisted and turned, branching off in multiple directions, and Kuruk navigated it with the confidence of someone who knew this terrain intimately. "My people use these canyons when we travel north," he explained as they slowed slightly to navigate a particularly narrow section. "I have ridden through here many times. Lakota and his warriors do not know these paths as I do." They turned into a side canyon, then another, winding deeper into the labyrinth of stone. The sound of their pursuers echoed off the walls, making it difficult to judge how close they were. Finally, Kuruk led them into a small hidden alcove, barely visible from the main passage where ancient people had carved dwellings into the rock face long ago. He quickly dismounted and helped Eleanor down, then led both horses deeper into the alcove where they would be hidden from casual view. "We wait here," he whispered, positioning himself at the edge of the alcove where he could watch the passage without being seen. "They will search, but these canyons have hundreds of such hiding places. If we are quiet and patient, they will pass by." Eleanor pressed herself against the cool stone wall, trying to quiet her ragged breathing. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared it might give away their position. Kuruk stood motionless as a statue, his knife drawn and ready, watching the passage with the intensity of a hunting eagle. Minutes passed like hours. Then they heard it, the sound of horses moving through the canyon, the low voices of Lakota warriors calling to each other as they searched. Eleanor held her breath as several riders passed by their hiding place, so close she could have reached out and touched them. But they did not look into the alcove, did not see the two figures pressed into the shadows. Then came a voice she recognized, Lakota, speaking in his own language to his warriors. Though Eleanor could not understand the words, the tone was clear. Frustration, anger, determination. He was not giving up the search easily. More time passed. The sun moved across the sky, and the shadows in the canyon shifted and lengthened. Still, they remained hidden, barely daring to move. Eleanor's legs cramped from standing so still. Her throat burned with thirst, but she endured it all without complaint. Finally, as the afternoon began to fade toward evening, the sounds of the searchers grew more distant, then faded away entirely. Kuruk waited even longer, making absolutely certain the Lakota warriors had truly left, before finally relaxing his vigilant stance. "They have gone to search other sections of the canyon," he said quietly. "But they will be back, and they will search more thoroughly. We must move now while we have the advantage." He gave Eleanor water from a leather flask and a piece of dried meat to restore her strength. Then they mounted their horses again and continued deeper into the canyon system. As darkness fell, Kuruk led them out of the canyons through a different route, emerging into a vast desert landscape dotted with sage and juniper. The moon rose full and bright, illuminating their path with silvery light. They rode through the night again, though at a slower pace to preserve the horse's strength. Eleanor found herself riding alongside Kuruk, and in the moonlight she studied his profile. The strong nose, the firm jaw, the way his long hair moved with the rhythm of his horse's gait. He seemed to sense her gaze and turned to look at her, and even in the pale light she could see the warmth in his eyes. "You are very brave, Eleanor Morgan," he said softly. "Many would have broken under such fear and hardship, but you remain strong." "I don't feel strong," Eleanor admitted. "I feel terrified and exhausted and completely lost. A week ago, I had a life, a home, a purpose. Now I don't know what I have or where I belong." "You have your freedom," Kuruk replied. "That is worth more than any building or business. And as for where you belong," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Perhaps you belong wherever your heart leads you." "And where does your heart lead you?" Eleanor asked, surprised by her own boldness. Kuruk was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and intense. "My heart leads me to you. From the moment I saw you in that trading post, standing behind the counter with your green eyes flashing as you negotiated with warriors from different tribes, I felt something I had never felt before. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself it was foolishness, that you were a white woman and I was Apache, that our worlds were too different. But then I heard that Lakota had taken you, and I knew I could not ignore it anymore. I had to try to free you, even if it cost me my life." Eleanor felt tears spring to her eyes at the raw honesty in his words. "But you don't even know me," she protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "How can you feel so strongly about someone you've only met twice?" "The heart does not count meetings," Kuruk replied simply. "It knows what it knows, but I do not ask you to feel the same. I only ask that you give us time for you to know me, for me to prove myself worthy of your trust. If after that time you wish to return to your own people, I will take you there myself and wish you well. But if you choose to stay—" Again, he left the sentence unfinished, but the promise hung in the air between them like a visible thing. They rode in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with unspoken possibilities. As dawn began to break, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold, Kuruk pointed to a distant line of mountains. "Beyond those mountains lies my village. We will be there by tomorrow evening if we maintain this pace. There, you will be safe. Lakota will not find you." "And what will your people think of you bringing a white woman to the village?" Eleanor asked, a valid concern given how the Lakota women had reacted to her presence. "Some will question it," Kuruk admitted honestly. "The Apache have suffered much at the hands of white men. Broken treaties, stolen lands, murdered families. But my people also value courage and honor. When they hear how you prevented bloodshed between the Lakota and Apache, how you endured captivity with dignity, how you were brave enough to risk escape, they will respect you, and they will accept you because I have chosen you, if you will have me." There it was again, that assumption that she might choose him, might want to stay with him. A week ago, Eleanor would have dismissed such an idea as insane. But now, after everything she had experienced, after feeling the strange connection that seemed to exist between her and this Apache warrior, she was no longer so certain. There was something about Kuruk that called to something deep within her. His strength, his honor, his fierce determination to protect her freedom even at great risk to himself. He had shown her more respect in 2 days than Lakota had in a week, treating her not as property to be possessed, but as a person whose choices mattered. They rested during the heat of the day in the shade of a rocky outcropping, taking turns keeping watch in case Lakota's warriors had somehow picked up their trail. Eleanor found herself watching Kuruk as he sat at the edge of their shelter, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. He was different from any man she had known. The soldiers at the fort who had courted her with their rough attempts at gallantry, the settlers who had proposed marriage out of practicality rather than affection, even Lakota with his possessive certainty that he knew what was best for her. Kuruk offered her something she had never expected to find in this wild land, a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine feeling. As the afternoon heat began to wane, they mounted up again for the final leg of their journey. They crossed into the mountains as darkness fell, following a narrow trail that wound through pine forests and rocky passes. The air grew cooler, scented with pine and sage, and Eleanor found herself breathing deeply, feeling more alive than she had in weeks. It was near midnight when they finally emerged from the mountains into a hidden valley, where the Apache village nestled beside a clear stream. The teepees here were different from the Lakota ones, smaller and more temporary looking, reflecting the Apache's more nomadic lifestyle. A few fires still burned, and sentries challenged them as they approached. But when they recognized Kuruk, they lowered their weapons and called out greetings. Kuruk led Eleanor to a teepee near the center of the village. "This belongs to my mother," he explained. "She died 2 winters ago, and since then, I have lived here alone. You will stay here, where you will be safe and comfortable. Tomorrow, when you have rested, I will introduce you properly to my people." Eleanor dismounted, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Days of fear, flight, and physical hardship had taken their toll, and she swayed on her feet. Kuruk caught her immediately, his strong arms steadying her. For a moment, they stood very close, and Eleanor could feel the warmth of his body, see the concern in his dark eyes. Her heart raced, but not from fear this time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For risking your life to save me, for treating me with respect, for offering me a choice. I don't know what I've done to deserve such kindness, but I am grateful." Kuruk's hand came up to gently cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a smudge of dirt. "You deserve it simply because you exist," he said softly. "Now rest. Tomorrow is a new beginning." He helped her into the teepee, where she found comfortable bedding and fresh water waiting. As Eleanor lay down on the soft furs, she could hear Kuruk settling himself just outside the entrance, standing guard to ensure her safety through the night. It was a gesture that touched her deeply. This warrior who had risked everything for her freedom now giving up his own comfort to protect her as she slept. For the first time in what felt like forever, Eleanor felt safe. And as she drifted off to sleep, her last conscious thought was of Kuruk's face, of the way he had looked at her with such intensity and tenderness, and of the strange, wonderful possibility that perhaps she had found something in this wild land that she had never expected to find. Not just freedom, but also love. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the sound of voices and the smell of cooking fires. She emerged from the teepee to find Kuruk waiting for her with food, fresh bread made from cornmeal, dried fruit, and strips of venison. The morning sun was bright and warm, and in its light she could see the Apache village more clearly. It was smaller than the Lakota village had been, perhaps 40 or 50 teepees, but it bustled with activity. Women worked at various tasks, children played along the stream, and warriors tended to their weapons and horses. "Come," Kuruk said after she had eaten. "I will introduce you to my uncle, who leads our people. His approval will ensure your acceptance here." He led her through the village to a larger teepee where an older man sat smoking a pipe. The man's face was deeply lined with age and wisdom, his long gray hair braided with beads and feathers. When he saw Eleanor, his expression was unreadable, but he gestured for them to sit. Kuruk spoke to his uncle in Apache, clearly explaining the situation. Eleanor caught her own name several times, as well as what she assumed were references to the Lakota and Dakota. The older man listened carefully, his sharp eyes studying Eleanor with penetrating intensity. Finally, he spoke, and though Eleanor could not understand the words, she heard the question in his tone. Kuruk responded at length, his voice passionate and earnest. Eleanor understood that he was advocating for her, explaining why she deserved their protection and acceptance. The conversation went back and forth for several minutes, with the uncle asking questions, and Kuruk providing answers. Finally, the older man turned to Eleanor and spoke in heavily accented English. "My nephew tells me you are a woman of honor and courage. He says you chose to prevent war between Lakota and Apache, even though it cost you chance at freedom. He says you are worthy of our protection. I ask you, what do you seek among the Apache people?" Eleanor took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I seek only what was taken from me, freedom and the right to choose my own path. Kuruk has offered me shelter and safety while I recover from my ordeal and decide what I want to do with my life." I do not come to cause trouble or bring danger to your people. If my presence here puts you at risk, I will leave." The uncle studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You speak with honesty. This is good. You may stay among us. But know this, if the Lakota chief comes seeking you, we will not start a war over one white woman. We will protect you as we can, but we will not sacrifice our people's lives unless you become one of us in truth." "I understand," Eleanor replied, though she felt a chill at the implication. "I would never want anyone to die because of me." The uncle nodded again, seeming satisfied. He spoke to Kuruk in Apache, and Eleanor saw relief and happiness flash across the warrior's face. As they left the uncle's teepee, Kuruk was smiling, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his usually serious features. "He has given his blessing," Kuruk explained. "You are under our protection now, and he has also given permission for me to court you, if you are willing." Eleanor felt her cheeks flush. "Court me? Is that what you've been doing?" "Since the moment I saw you," Kuruk admitted, his smile turning slightly mischievous. "Though perhaps I have been more direct than is customary in your culture. Among my people, when a warrior finds a woman worthy of him, he does not waste time with pretense. He makes his intentions known, and then proves himself worthy through his actions." "And what actions do you plan to prove yourself with?" Eleanor asked, surprised to find herself flirting with him. "Whatever actions you require," Kuruk replied seriously. "If you want me to hunt and bring you the finest meat, I will do it. If you want me to craft you the most beautiful jewelry, I will learn how. If you want me to simply give you time and space to heal from your ordeal, I will give you that as well. Tell me what you need, Eleanor, and I will provide it." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. "I need time," she finally said. "Time to adjust to everything that has happened. Time to know you better. Time to understand my own heart. Can you give me that?" "I can give you all the time you need," Kuruk assured her. "I am a patient man when the prize is worth waiting for. And you, Eleanor Morgan, are worth waiting a lifetime for." The weeks that followed were unlike anything Eleanor had ever experienced. She settled into life among the Apache, learning their ways, their language, their customs. The women of the tribe, after initial wariness, began to accept her, teaching her how to weave baskets, how to prepare traditional foods, how to tan hides in the Apache manner. She proved to be a quick learner, her natural intelligence and determination earning their respect. But it was the time she spent with Kuruk that truly transformed her. True to his word, he courted her with patience and devotion. He took her riding through the mountains, showing her hidden waterfalls and meadows filled with wildflowers. He taught her to track animals and read the signs of the land. He shared stories of his childhood, his dreams, his fears, and slowly, day by day, Eleanor felt the walls around her heart beginning to crumble. Kuruk was unlike any man she had ever known. He was strong and fierce when necessary, yet gentle and thoughtful in his daily interactions. He treated her as an equal, valuing her opinions and respecting her choices. When she spoke, he listened with his full attention. When she struggled with a task, he offered help without making her feel inadequate. And when she needed space, he gave it without question or complaint. One evening, about 3 weeks after her arrival, they sat together on a ridge overlooking the valley as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple. Eleanor had been quiet all day, lost in thought, and Kuruk had respected her silence. But now, as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, she finally spoke. "I've been thinking about my old life," she said softly. "My trading post, my independence, the person I was before all of this happened. Sometimes I miss it, the simplicity of it, the sense of control I had over my own existence." Kuruk said nothing, simply waiting for her to continue. It was one of the things she had come to love about him, his ability to listen without immediately trying to fix or change what she was feeling. "But then, I think about what that life really was," Eleanor continued. "I was alone, always working, always proving myself to people who would never fully accept me because I was a woman in a man's world. I was independent, yes, but I was also isolated. I had freedom, but no one to share it with. And I realize now that I was lonely, even if I didn't admit it to myself. She turned to look at Kuruk, finding him watching her with those intense dark eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul. Here, with you, with your people, I found something I didn't even know I was missing. I found community, purpose, connection. I found someone who sees me not as a woman who needs to be protected or controlled, but as a partner, an equal. I found... She paused, gathering her courage. I've found love if I'm brave enough to accept it. Kuruk's expression transformed, hope and joy lighting his features. Eleanor, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Are you saying what I hope you are saying? I'm saying that I don't want to go back to my old life, Eleanor replied, her heart pounding but her voice steady. I'm saying that I choose to stay here, with you, with the Apache. I'm saying that if your offer still stands, I want to accept it. I want to be your wife, Kuruk. Not because I'm being forced or because I have no other choice, but because it's what my heart truly wants. For a moment, Kuruk simply stared at her, as if unable to believe what he was hearing. Then, moving with sudden decisiveness, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a passion that took her